This is a live channels television event.
Speak to this eloquent nominee, Mr. Okechukwu Enelamah, our ministerial nominee. I see from your CV that you first graduated as a medical doctor and shortly after delved into financial studies and management, getting qualified as a chartered accountant, and then went into business studies where you did a master's in business administration. And you have been working in the finance industry for quite a while now, and a chief executive officer of one of the foremost investment companies in Nigeria, the Capital Alliance, which I personally know as a very good company. You spoke about the sacrifice that you are going to make, that those of you who have enjoyed so much from this nation are ready to plow something back. But I look at your tax clearance certificate, and your earnings for 2014 topped out at 27 million naira gross. And coming in as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria under the current situation of our economy, I do not see a public officer in that position anything near this figure. Have you actually appraised the sacrifice you are going to make? And if you have appraised it, how do you hope to catch up with such great shortfalls that we expect may be happening when you become confirmed as the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Secondly, having traversed several different spheres of the industry, of the Nigerian life, I want to ask, what do you think you will contribute as a minister to turn around the economy of this country as fast as it is required to maximize the effect of that economy on the biggest problems that we have in Nigeria today, which is unemployment? Thank you.
Mr. Nominee Okechukwu, I congratulate you for appearing before us, and also I'm proud that you are an alumni of my school, Government College Umuahia. So, going through your CV, oh, no, he should not bow and go, he has a lot to contribute. Going through your CV, one can see that you are very well experienced in the economy of this country. As we speak now, there is a threat that most banks will go under if something urgent is not done, and so many other threats that suggest to us that APC has not come up with any known policy, economic policy. Who is? And for that, we are heading as if we are clueless, because if you check what is going on in the system, most people are finding it difficult to feed as we speak now. Now, with your vast knowledge about finances and the economy, how will you address what we have before us? Because this country is heading downwards, and if nothing urgent is done, we shall be in trouble. We shall enter into recession. Whereas the previous government was able to handle it, and Nigeria could not be classified as one of the countries that is heading for recession. Thank you.
Mr. Nominee, three main questions. The issue of youth unemployment and the issue of turning around the economy and some other issues. Why I'm saying that is that we do not repeat ourselves. The serious colleagues, I think that there are two major questions that have come out. I'm just trying to ensure that anybody who's asking questions of that, we should not repeat these two major issues. One, we'll give you time to address those two important issues. The issue of youth unemployment and the issue that if given this position, how will you be able to turn around the economy? Then you can also take the other questions with emphasis on those two questions, and then for also that we can take note of that so that for that questions and no repetition.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I'm so glad that you summarized those questions that way, because in my view, those questions are very related. And at the very heart of them are the issue of youth unemployment and also how to move the economy forward. Let me try and address it in a number of ways. Let me start from what I call an outside-in answer. I think the challenges we're facing, one has to put it in context. We live at a time when oil prices have dropped in half. We live at a time when a lot of the growth that the world was seeing was coming from China, and China itself has slowed down. We live at a time when, with some of the recovery that we're seeing in the United States, a lot of the so-called emerging economies, of which I will include Nigeria, meaning more developing countries, are seeing funds being taken away from them or taken back from them and flowing back to the West in some respects, and creating further turbulence in those economies. And I think all these things create pressures on our own economy. And some of the things we're seeing, at least this year, including the slowed growth. I mean, Nigeria for the last 10 years grew at about 7% on average, although there wasn't much employment, and I'll come to the employment issue. And recently, in the last year, it's been growing at roughly 3% this year, 2015. So these are challenging times that we live in. And the first thing I would say is that, like, to solve this kind of problem, we need a shared vision for this country, and I might add for this government, of what are those things we will do. Because the thing about an economy is a system. If you pull one lever, it affects all the other levers. So we have to think in terms of what are the monetary policies that will support the economy to grow. Whether in terms of interest rates, our view on inflation, and of course our view on foreign exchange rate. Then we'll think about fiscal policies in terms of what do we want to emphasize. In my view, I think it's appropriate to emphasize those areas that create what I called earlier inclusive growth. All growths are not equal. There is growth and then there is growth. In fact, in the private sector, we talk about quality of earnings. Not all earnings are the same. And the same thing about growth. My sense is that the kind of growth you need, the growth that takes place, some people at times talk about the real sector, industrial sector, things like agriculture, manufacturing, making sure that those sectors that create jobs as they are growing and as the businesses are expanding, get more incentives and more support and more of an enabling environment, to grow. And part of it is having an abundance mentality. My view is that, like, the potential of this country is enormous, but to realize that potential, we would need to make sure that the things people need to do their work, whether it's in terms of what economists will call factors of production, in terms of capital, in terms of labor, and in terms of all the other things that they need that will help them, that will provide it. I believe that, like, the key for any government, including this new government, is to work cohesively and not work in silos. Because in the past, what has happened is that at times you have people doing different things, but these are discordant notes. They're not playing together and are not producing what you might call a compound result, which is what you want, a multiplier effect. So I would say that, like, the economy, we have to focus on supporting the industries and the parts of the economy that will create growth. I also should make the point, which I made earlier, about going well beyond oil to think about non-oil sources of revenue. If you look at the issue of taxes, I believe that there is a lot of room to improve there. And it's not because the tax laws, there's anything wrong with them. It's more to do with compliance by all the people who are active in the economy, in a way that the government then has more revenues to work with, to apply to these areas we're talking about. Because ultimately, when you look at an economy, It's still about how big are your revenues, how big are your costs. And it's the difference between that you have to invest in capital projects, which is the last comment I'll make on this, infrastructure. That in order for an economy to grow, you need to provide an enabling environment, both in hard infrastructure, things like roads, things like rail, and in soft infrastructure. And the enabling environment in terms of legislation, in terms of judiciary, and all those things. And my view is that, like, if we are committed, we can get the results we're looking for. But it would take all of us pulling together in the same direction to get those results. Now, in terms of youth unemployment, I think there are two things we have to tackle. One is to make sure that our youth are getting the kind of training that will help them be gainfully employed. I think the era when you got paper qualifications is not where we are today. So whether it's in terms of training, in terms of vocational education, we have to make sure that our youth are equipped. And then secondly, we have to create opportunities for on-the-job training. Because I will tell you that the most important thing a young man has to get is skills. You know, the money can come later. So even if they're not as well paid, provided they are getting the experience they need, you know, which is why, again, I emphasize the things that require a lot of labor and a lot of training. And so my view is that, like, it's by working cohesively, pulling in the same direction, that will solve this stubborn problem of unemployment.